table? No. Okay. Well, I'm Chris the Mayor. We'll start at that side. Table? No. Okay. Well, I'm Chris the Mayor, and we've got Councillor Rutherford Phil on Zoom. And you guys?
Good on everyone. Ko e Charawa Takwinga. My name's Ed, and I'm the CEO at Sport Tasman, so thanks for having us.
Kia ora, ko Roxana Tukoinga. I'm the Play Active Recreation and Sport Manager at Sport Tasman.
Welcome. It saved us a couple of minutes.
Would be able to select through and try it.
Are we live, Caitlin?
Perfect. Thank you.
You're live? Okay. Thank you. Okay, welcome everybody to a briefing from Sports Tasman. Welcome to anybody who's online watching. And for those who are online watching, we have Councillor Rutherford joining us today via Zoom. So we'll hand over to you, Ed, to lead off. If you're leading off, that is.
I will, but not for too long. Kia ora everyone. Yeah, as I said, ko e Charawa Takwinga. Firstly, thank you for your time. Really appreciate that. We just want to start by acknowledging all of you as councillors and all of your council staff for everything you do for the region and all you're doing around physical activity, and really start there. For those online, I hope you can hear me okay. So you can't quite see me, but you can see me just perking out there. Purpose today, really, I wanted to ask the team to share a little bit around our strategy and how and what we're seeing and our approach, and really to listen around council ambitions around physical activity to really understand that. The goal outcome for us is to really dovetail to understand and how we can best support council around aspirations around physical activity. Being really clear, there's no aspiration from this conversation at all around funding. It isn't our intent to apply for funding. This is around partnership. This is around collaboration. This is about us entering into conversation to really understand your ambitions for the region, to understand our approach and to see how that best works. So I hope that sets a really open, transparent approach to the meeting. So I'm going to pass over to Roxana Holsworth as our manager for Play Active Rec and Sport. Rox is going to go through a little bit around what we're seeing, what we do, and to really open up a conversation around the biggest challenges you face and where you'd like our support. And so I'll pass over to Rox, but I'm available anytime for questions as well. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Ed. Rox.
Cool. Kia ora. So as you mentioned, all we're going to do today is talk through our strategy. I'll touch a little bit on our name, and then we'll talk about what we're trying to achieve as a regional sports trust, and what hopefully you'll indulge me in a little activity as to what you'd like to see for an active buller, just to help us as we look towards the next year of planning. The intent really is about partnership and how we can support. So that's what we would like to enter this conversation into. So Sport Tasman, what we're trying to achieve, our vision is everybody active or everyone active. And we're trying to aim to do that through high quality and equitable physical activity. So you notice physical activity, although sport is in our name, we cover play, active recreation and sport. So really it's about how do we encourage people to move their bodies in ways that work for them. The end goal being that lifelong love of movement, however you choose to do that. And we know that that changes over the course of our lives. So our focuses are really on leadership, collaboration, building capability rather than direct program delivery. So you may know Sport Tasman in the past have delivered physical activity or sport, and we've moved away from that now to thinking about how we can build the capability of those who already do have good mahi to deliver those quality opportunities. So it's really about supporting the sector wider potentially than sport and recreation organisations. So thinking about schools, where are those people that we're looking to engage in physical activity, where do they go and how can we work with those organisations? Really to be able to build that success around physical activity. So the Tasman part doesn't capture everybody, but what we're trying to show here is our area. So we cover Bulla all the way across to Kaikoura. That's catchment. And so we work across our region to ensure that physical activity is of a high quality and is equitable, so that everybody can participate. So this data is based on what we understand nationally about physical activity engagement, but is very true when we see it on a regional level. So many adults and young people don't achieve the physical activity guidelines. So for young people, that's 60 minutes a day. For anyone over 18, that's roughly 2.5 hours a week. And so we're seeing that fewer people are meeting those physical activity guidelines, which would eventually positively impact their health. We know that in teenage years, activity declines for a number of reasons. So for us, it's about how do we engage young people in physical activity that meets their needs. Typically and traditionally, that's been through sport. But what we're hearing more from rangatahi and tamariki is those ways to engage in active recreation, so things that aren't necessarily organised. Girls and young women typically participate less than young men and boys. So how do we address the gender gap there? Those facing socioeconomic barriers, understandably, face difficulties accessing physical activity, as do those with accessibility challenges, and that's across all ages. So for us, it's about, when we're thinking about growing physical activity, encouraging people to meet activity guidelines, but also developing that lifelong love, how do we address those barriers? And so for us, it's about who's missing out, what are the barriers they're experiencing, and how do we support our communities to really address those? So not so much about those who are already active, but more about who's missing out and how can we help them. So that all of that is to say that this is a depiction of our strategic summary from until 2028. So our two core pillars are on showing sector leadership and building sector capability. So how do we really support the physical activity sector in all its facets to deliver those high quality and equitable opportunities for people to be active, really focusing on those barriers. And so for Bulla, there's obviously a lot of opportunities and a lot of unique traits that come with Bulla. So strong community identity, we know you have a beautiful natural environment to leverage, and from what we understand, a strong volunteer spirit. So those are the things that we see as opportunities to leverage when it comes to building physical activity opportunities in Bulla. There's obviously opportunities everywhere to improve equitable access to recreation and physical activity, but we also know that distance, cost, transport, the geographical disbursement of your region is also a core challenge to look at how we address as well. And so for us, it's about how do we support local leadership and collaboration to address those for a number of reasons and a number of ways, typically looking at those who are less active. So in 2023, Sport New Zealand did a bit of research on the social value and economic value of physical activity. So they looked at what it was, I suppose, what it would do for health, in particular for long-term health, how it would benefit the economy. And so that's a really good piece of research to leverage when we're thinking about how we grow physical activity, not just for individual wellbeing, but also for a district-wide approach. So a good example for you is for your parkrun. So you bring in, obviously local people participate, about 40 to 50 people a week, but you also have an element of tourism to that. So there's the parkrun alphabet, and people will go around the country trying to find parkruns that align with the alphabet so they can tick them off their sense of achievement there. So it brings in a lot for the area. So when we think about why it matters, we're thinking about how do we encourage or strengthen community wellbeing, connection, wellbeing, resilience, pride. Physical activity is a beautiful tool for addressing a lot of the social outcomes we're trying to address through other means. That's why I work in the sports sector. So for us, it's about how do we address those challenges through the geography, the socioeconomic challenges, demography, all those sorts of things. So we know that when people are more active on it and finding things that they love to do, they're healthier, but so is the community for that as well. So for us, it's about how do we invest in those opportunities? How do we encourage inclusion? How do we encourage people to be more active? And then when we think about your council priorities, when I think about your long-term plans and the things you're trying to achieve, it really is about healthier, connected communities. How do you strengthen resilience and wellbeing? How do you encourage positive youth engagement and positive outcomes for young people? we're also thinking about the intergenerational elements of physical activity. How can whānau and older people also be active together? Supporting activation of your spaces and facilities and places, and really about maximising partnership. So you don't always have to fix everything in the same way that we don't, but who are those key players in the sector that we can leverage and use their expertise to address some of these barriers. So our approach across the region, but particularly here, is probably can be categorised by 4 things. So that's partner, so really working closely with council, with iwi, with schools, with our providers of physical activity, with our community agencies and organisations. So thinking a bit wider and probably a bit more innovatively about how we address physical activity barriers outside of our sector. Understanding a key focus for us is being insights-led. So how do we utilise the voices of community, of those people missing out on physical activity, to identify and address those barriers they're experiencing? And how do we bring that to you, or to enhance the knowledge that you have to be able to address those? And then support. So that's heavily leaning into that capability building. We have access to best practice nationally and regionally, and resources, collaboration, and then really how do we encourage those sustainable local solutions? And one of the ways that we can do that is through our Tū Manawa Fund, which is a Sport New Zealand fund that we administer on their behalf. And then lastly, advocate. So really thinking about equitable opportunities, access, what are the needs of your community, and how can we best support and advocate for those as part of the council process. So from a staffing approach, this is how it kind of looks. So in the leadership and advocacy, we have 2 staff members in particular that feed across those 2. So the regional connector for Bullet and Rural Tasman. You may have known that role previously as the community outcomes advisor. Recently that role has changed. That's Tara's role. So that will be really about how we build or assess what the physical activity system is for the region. Who are the key players in that? How do we provide leadership and advocacy and support to that group? And then how do we, in terms of the spaces and places, how do we offer support, advice, guidance, best practice around facilities, spaces and places where people are active, above and beyond the potential just to maintain them? Like, how do we know that they're meeting people's needs, that they're a good return on investment for council, and that they're addressing some of those barriers to being active? And then in the support, we've got our wider Sport Tasman team. So the Healthy Active Learning team, who deliver PLD into the region twice a year. We have our sport capability lead, who's here to support on the sport front in terms of what clubs, how we best connect those to regional sports organisations and national ones. A disability advisor, who's also our Halberg advisor, so really advising on accessibility and how we best cater for those accessibility challenges. And then, as I mentioned before, Tū Manawa funding. So really utilising that fund to address barriers to physical activity for those who are delivering those cool opportunities. So if we think about what success looks like regionally, but also in Bullet, it's that more people are active more regularly, they're meeting those physical activity guidelines, their well-being is impacted positively, and they're able to experience the positive benefits of that. There's improved access, so it's not just about opening a door, it's about helping someone walk through it. So what does equitable access to physical activity look like? It's stronger collaboration between organisations and sector. So there's, where there's disjoint or gaps, how do we plug those? Increase confidence and capability. So making sure that people feel confident and capable to address those barriers. And really those longer term benefits that you're trying to achieve for your council priorities. So resilience, wellbeing, connection, and participation. So these are the things that we've identified that we'd love to support you with. But obviously I don't have an opportunity for you to feed into that too, but really looking at how we support the championing of physical activity as a wellbeing investment. One of the ways that we can look at doing that is developing and adopting strategies. So other regions have play, active recreation and sport strategies that the regional sports trusts support them with, which are really good outputs for identifying what are the priorities against those different areas and how can we support with that. spaces and places strategies as well, facility optimization, maintenance, that sort of thing. Collaborative planning, community-led solutions, insights gathering, accessibility, really looking at return on investment for what you put into the community, and then building partnerships and strengthening those participation opportunities across Bulla, so across your whole region.
I've really seen those strategies support councils in other regions. We're really aware of the volume of requests and challenges and the width and the fiscal challenges, and having that roadmap to guide that decision and that allocation and those grants and those resources has been really useful. A really data-driven approach to robust physical activity guidelines and facilities. Sport New Zealand have got some incredible resources and skills on that, and that we can plug in. And Gemma joined the team last week as a dedicated council spaces places leads to really work with the councils on that. So that would be a key piece for me to advocate around what's our landing place around the needs of the region and how's that represented in strategies. Yeah.
So it's probably really an opportunity for us to hear from you. What would an active Bulla look like? What are the key challenges that you see? What does success look like for you for people to be more active, feel more connected, and participate in physical activity? When we think about some of those barriers to being active, what do you see is already happening in your region that we should be celebrating and really honing in on? And then where do you feel the gaps are in terms of access and opportunity that we could really look at how we address? So yeah, just open forum.
Great. Tony, before you ask.
Thank you for coming in. I suppose you have highlighted a lot of the barriers that we see in the Bull around transport and affordability, being so spread out, and also, the unique townships we have. I like to celebrate some of the work done in the Northern Bulla as well, and with because we have a very different demographic, and that's lots of people over the age of 65. So, looking at activity, we often always go down trying to get youth on board, but there's not that many youth out there. In fact, there's more older people that need help and support as well. So I really like that we've been sort of partnering out there with Sport Tasman and really utilising the assets that we have out there. It's only small, but I've had some really great feedback. I suppose, it's just partnering with what is there. I think it'll be a really great cost and time saving already, just sort of really getting to know what these small areas need by working with leaders and the community, and just really listening, because we tend to jump in and go, wow, we'll just do this and that, but is it what people really want? So I just thanks for supporting people in the Bulla, and I just hope that we continue to partner well using our facilities as well, because we do have some good ones, so that would be success for me.
Thank you. I would say your facilities are incredible, and too often it's a default on just human built. And if I think about your coast, the landscape, you've got the most beautiful playground, and you've got a naturally active community, and so I think you do harness those strengths. Something just on demographics. Our previous strategy was youth only. This strategy isn't. It's very aware. The feedback from councils when we engaged a year and a half ago was that's not representing all of our community. There's no denying our current funding lines into us are heavily biased to youth only. But that doesn't stop our strategic intent and doesn't stop us having to consider how we're going to tackle that at Sport Tasman. And that has probably been the key feedback from councils, is like actually which percentage of our population you're serving and how. So I think you're bang on there.
So Tony, amongst all her other jobs, is the deputy chair of the community committee. Okay, and our deputy mayor, who would like to speak now, is the chair of the community committee.
Thanks for coming, guys. I think the biggest challenge for us as a council is affordability. And so we do support facilities a lot. It's one of our biggest bugbears is our halls. The Pulse Energy Centre is something that is heavily subsidised, and affordability for our community is a big one. And if we were talking about barriers, that is the biggest barrier, is affordability. And the pressure on council right now around, we've just been through an annual plan process. We're trying to cut back, and the place that we refused to cut back on was probably our community facilities, because we understand the benefit of them. So it is a challenging time for districts like us, and plus it's a time of reform. But this stuff is important, as you say. We have some amazing cycle trails which are free for people to use. I just wondered how much work you guys do with the likes of, when we are talking about youth, with home builders and Tiha or Kawatiri. Do you guys touch base with them as to what the barriers are for youth? Yeah. So it's kind of appreciate all the work, but there are many challenges, but also those things are what uplift our community. And I think that's why we've insisted that when we're cutting back on costs, that's the one area we don't cut back on. But it is, and also just interested in your spaces and places strategy. So we've just done our reserve management plans, and alongside of that, it does in our report that was done by consultants, it said that we should be running those alongside of places and those strategies. I guess at the time our staff are pretty under the pump, and the ability to do that. When I asked Brent about whether it was going to be done, he said it is on the radar. So any support that could be given to Brent when it gets to the stage of doing that would be greatly appreciated, because I guess we don't have to reinvent the wheel with it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest areas we identified we weren't resourcing enough with direct support to councils. That was why Janet's role is a new role, and that's really dedicated on, do we actually understand the challenges councils are fully facing, and are we plugging in the right support? And the particular focus is around places and spaces. Absolutely. There'll be some comms coming out in the next week, actually encouraging some cross council here on this, and then Best Pro Sport New Zealand visiting, talking through these place and space strategy, and then us plugging in resource to actually do some lifting through that. So 100%. Yeah.
Yes, some resource around it would be great.
Thanks, sir. Oh, sorry, Dave Hawks from Reefton.
Yeah, Dave Hawks, Reefton, no councillor. Just a question, straight out of the blue. If you could change one thing or focus on one change that would make the biggest possible difference, what would you do?
We might have different answers, but I'm happy to go straight and honest from you've asked straight up front. So I would, when I joined what I'm going to call the physical activity sector, I think there's a lot of silos. There are so many different organisations who are fundamentally vital to physical activity. For me, success lies coordination, and we're happy to be part of that, but to bring everyone around and to coordinate, I really do think around physical activity strategies that unites and engages all partners, because we know the challenges and choices, and we can't do everything, but to really all coordinate on a child first and community first approach with everyone around the table, and it's a complex landscape. That would be my goal. So I would focus around strategy at a community level with all the right partners, which really is our roadmap for what we do or can't do with limited resource. Yeah, I'm very happy to facilitate that. It's not for Sport Tasman to push it, but very happy to facilitate and do a lot of legwork around that. Yeah.
And mine would be play at different sport strategies as well. So I've seen them work firsthand in another region at a different RST I worked at, and they're very effective because they outline a clear roadmap for how you will address the barriers specific to your region, but also leverage the expertise of the Regional Sports Trust and the council and the community to make sure that those are addressed across a certain period. So they are very effective.
Yeah, Dave.
Thanks for that really, really good presentation. Intuitively, we all know that it's good for us to get out there and do more, and then we look at our own activity level and go, well, maybe I could dip my game a bit. I'm pretty sure we all could. But what you've got the questions up there. What would success look like for Buller if more people were active, connected, and participating? And then you sort of flow on from there. The problem is we intuitively know it's good, but it would be really good to get some metrics, you know, in terms of improving mental well-being, mental health, improving physical health, reducing the amount of people seeking mental health might be a good indicator that we're doing well, or less people down there for heart-related illnesses or avoidable illnesses, that physical participation would help. I mean, I saw it on the weekend here in Westport. It's all anecdotal though. And I saw about 20, 30 people running on the Kawatiri Trail, which is excellent, and cycling. And I thought, gee, they look a bit tired for just doing a run from Carter's Beach. But then I found out they came from all the way from Charleston. Gee, okay. So that was good things happening. Higher participation in sports, more access for our people in the sports teams to travel throughout the region and the areas. Those things look like support, but it would be nice to get some metrics around it and maybe take that to central government for funding opportunities, or you know, put it in front of us and say, here you go, you're a success story here with the Kawatiri Trail and these areas here.
I agree. I'm really happy to take it forward. It's no longer just sport for sport's sake. You have to be able to articulate it. A really good piece of research, it's only one area, but it's done recently, is around education and how physical activity impacts numeracy, literature, and attendance. And the statistics are really strong and clear. There is no reason why such evidence and data can't be presented across a range of areas. I do think we need to be able to articulate that value when the decisions are that challenging. So yes, that work is starting nationally. There can be done more, but I would take that back. I hear you. Yeah.
Can I just ask a question before we go to Tony? How does Sports Tasman interact with the council? I'm new to local body and new to BDC. So how do you interact with council generally?
Council here or
Council, well, yeah, council here or councils in general?
It would vary. What I really would like is, I think too often the relationship has been based around an investment, and that's for me sometimes limiting around the partnership. So healthy for me would be, you know, we're a value add at the infancy of any discussion to support your staff and to support yourself, rather than some metrics to deliver. So however that looks for you, we will meet. But our intent is high comms as frequent as possible, and to start with a rhythm that suits. Some examples. Currently, in Nelson example, there's 2 councillors I work with really closely around the sport and rec portfolio, and then the dedicated staff team, and we're working side by side. And then maybe every 6 months we might report back to council, but there's some delegation, so we're really clear on who we work with from progress and momentum. So, but again, that would be however you want. I don't have a standard view. For me, it's your staff have been super supportive to Tara and the team here, and it's understanding how and when we best engage with councillors. Great for me looks like when you go into planning, we're there at the start to help you with the insights, with the data, with the strategy, rather than coming in late, you know.
Just again, before we go to Tony, I guess, you know, from my point of view, I would have thought that it was the community committee interaction with Sport Tasman and staff. Is that how it would work? Tony, sorry, you were going. You always do that, Tony.
I know, just a question to you. So how does supporting girls and teenagers look like for Sports Tasman, especially in the Buller?
What it's typically look like is being insight-led, so gathering a lot of data. So Tara has recently done Voice of Rangatahi surveying into the schools in Buller, and girls' participation has been flagged as low. So then it's about how do we work with those schools to understand specifically what are the barriers. So for women and girls, it's generally a difference between personal and practical barriers. So when we talk about practical, it's around those things like cost, transport. The personal ones are more around body image, how girls feel, the different changes in their bodies, but also around, there's a sort of a gender stereotype around concentrating more on school as opposed to being active. Sport not meeting their needs. I was definitely someone in secondary school who opted out of PE. So I understand that that's a barrier for girls participating. So for us, it's about how do we work with those who deliver physical activity to women and girls to make sure that it actually meets their needs. Oftentimes for women and girls, that means separate opportunities so that they can engage in physical activity. And other times it's around how do we prioritise their well-being and what they actually want to do. So for an example, for cricket, we looked at how do we stop long days in the field, hard balls. What does that look like to have a really snappy, quick competition where actually what you're prioritising is that sense of belonging, music, having fun, and the physical activity is a byproduct. So that's what keeps people coming back.
And in the school setting, which is only one, just to give you an example, my hope and aspiration is we support with the data collection, the insight. We really understand what the girls want. We work with the provider to understand, can we advocate for them to provide that, and can we build capability they can? And then we plug in funding throughout to manner so we can actually back up with data insights. There's a gap. These people are missing out on activity. This activity meets the needs. And we access some of our to manner funding, which is about 420,000 a year to be distributed across the region to break down barriers. And we plug that in to that. So in a school, for me, that would be identify the child voice, come up with a solution, support the capability, try and fund if we can.
One last question. So what are the percentages of girls and teens in the Bulla? Is it quite high? Do you think it's quite high with girls and teens in the Bulla participating in physical activity?
For girls, I think one of the schools we looked at, only 26% of girls or something was actually enjoying physical activity. So there's a difference between who's participating, because sometimes PE is mandated and you have to do it, as to those who actually feel like physical activity meets their needs. So that percentage was low.
And how does that compare to boys?
Boys was high, or on a national average, pretty.
Okay.
Yeah.
What type of stat would that be? Do you know?
No, not off the top of my head.
These cousins.
So that statistic for girls in Bulla, how does that compare to New Zealand?
I
Do we
have a
know?
check. It wasn't stark. It generally varies because obviously population size.
Yeah.
But on average, we're finding that girls are not enjoying physical activity as much as boys, and therefore it affects their participation in that.
So we've got Dave Force, and then Deputy Mayor's got another question.
Yes, out of left field, just to challenge you. We've descended from sport as such participation into physical activity, and we're kind of conflating the two, in my view. So I'm just throwing it out there. Darts, pool are sports. They create a sense of engagement, well-being. They fit a lot of the things, not physical activity, obviously, but I guess you're up and walking around. But you know, they actually cover off everything apart from physical activity. And I just want to know, do you guys consider things like that where, you know, you're saying girls are excluded? There are some things that may not involve physical activity, but provide a lot of other well-beings. Do you consider that within your ambit, really?
We do. We've actually had lots of internal debates around the difference between active recreation and sport. Even I have different views. Because some sports cross over the boundaries, right? Of yes, you can go and have a competition, compete in sport, you still get those benefits. But on the same side, you can just turn up to a park and play with friends, and that's active recreation. So it's I think Sport New Zealand potentially also have the same challenge around how they differentiate. You do get a sense of well-being. Those are all listed nationally as sports. You're right. I mean, I've seen people play darts. They get a sweat up. You can meet the physical activity guidelines in any way. And there's different, obviously you can talk about intensity and what that looks like, but really for us, it's about movement. So if you are walking around a pool table, that's physical activity. You also get the benefits of that. Going for a walk with a friend. We have a group of people at work that go for a walk at lunchtime. not necessarily getting your heart rate up, but it's that the connection and the other benefits that come with that whilst you're moving your body.
I suppose just to follow up on that then is, you know, there's also progression. So there's participation and then there's progression to other options. So, you know, I mean, I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, so we have Sport New Zealand have a great framework called the Sport Pathways Framework. So it's got four different levels: foundation, social, competitive, and performance. The performance is the high performance Sport New Zealand domain, so it looks at how you represent New Zealand. But those other three are what we would love to see, a distribution of sport participation across those other three. So I talk about sport in particular. It should be like branches on a tree. And whatever stage you are in your life, you should be able to drop down and do something different, play social sport, go back to competitive. So for us, it's about how do we create pathways that aren't necessarily towards performance, but allow people to dip in and out.
Yeah, I'd just say, socially, I'd love to have the conversation with you. It's a great debate. Two good examples over the last 2 years. We've been doing a lot of work with Kapahaka as an example, you know, not a sport, but been vital to us around physical activity. Another example in our region has been a school that identified the best way for their children to be physically active was a replantation of a wetland area.
Yeah.
You know, and we absolutely backed it. And so for us, that is our definition. It's defined by the community within realms, but yeah.
I love that one.
Gardening is also a very valid form of physical activity. So
Yeah.
I'd love to see more applications.
Okay, we got Shane and then Paul.
My question is going to be around volunteerism, but I want to tell you guys in 1993, I worked for Sport Buller and they ran the Women's Recreation Festival throughout New Zealand because of the lack of participation in females in sport and recreation. So, you know, in 23 years or 33 years, what's changed? And so for me, it's a concerning fact that in actual fact, you know, there was this big push on it way back then. And there was a whole kind of month of festival stuff where females were encouraged to cave, to go abseiling. Like it was a huge festival. Anyway, it's still an issue. But I just wanted to know around volunteers, because we get volunteer fatigue here. We get the same people, small community doing, and they're not just the people that volunteer for sport, they're the people that volunteer to run events, so the people, they are the volunteers. And so I just wondered how you guys support, or if you support volunteerism or advocate for that in any way. Because it is a big thing, particularly even with people trying to, you know, get kids away to tournament and fundraising and all of that stuff. It becomes bigger than being hurt for some people. Yeah.
Yeah, I think on the first point around female participation, I hear you. It is national. It's regionally, the inequities are growing. There are 6 or 7 clear subcategories who have participated probably at half the rate of others. So, and there's a lot of data there we can support it. In terms of volunteers, it's a really live conversation for us. So there are hundreds of organisations involved with the delivery of physical activity. We know the people who are across all of them. One question we are trying to have with multiple agencies is, do we all need to go alone? Where are the shared services? Where is the support? So if you think of the model, there's just singular entities generally for each code, for each group. Each one does their own finance, each one does their own HR. And so the actual collective need, and if there's efficiencies, is probably where our attention is at the moment. But that volunteer fatigue, I'm happy to look at. That is definitely not unique to here. That is what we're seeing across the country, especially given now there's been paid roles in the sector, then the challenges of who does what. But the biggest focus for me would actually be getting people to work together, and where organisations, and we've seen some pretty good examples in this region of where sports have worked together and there's efficiencies, it's a lot more sustainable and fiscally likely to succeed. So I would be looking at that opportunity. If you see collab opportunities, hubs, opportunities for not duplicating facilities, shared usage, community need, that's probably the priority.
I think if there was support as well for things like fundraising, you know, if there was filling out funding applications, fundraising ideas, if there was kind of a bit of a support around that for volunteers, so there was a resource available that those people could go to help with ideas, but also with applications would be useful.
Part of our work with Sport Codes in particular is around how do they induct, retain, and look after volunteers.
Yeah.
So that's a big piece of capability building for us with those organisations.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense that, like every kids rugby club have to do a separate application for funding. Would it not be better from a region like this that you put in an application that covers all of your clubs and they're all supported to the same level kind of thing? I just think it would be useful to have some more strategic thinking around that.
And that's part of our we're forming close relationships with those regional sports organisations, which a lot of those clubs are affiliated to.
Yeah.
So what's the accountability and the support that they can offer for fundraising, for funding, for sort of collective opportunities.
I take the point about what resource support. Yeah, I'm all of that.
Thanks, guys. We've got Paul and then Dave Hawes.
Well, I certainly see sport and exercise as being synonymous, and of course, linked again is health. And so, to me, the only reason for funding sport is for personal health, and it certainly does have an increase in health. As Roxana observed, some have withdrawn at high school age, start of high school, which I've observed too. And schools are probably the one area where there is a real focus on physical activity / sport. But by the time they're over at high school, there are quite a number that have withdrawn, and they're going to be withdrawn all their lives. And the observation from me is body type, and a lot of them will tray or diet, which is the reason they don't want to get involved in sport. Well, at least for some of them. Do you have any programs specifically to aim at those people that we could identify as being withdrawing from activity to try and encourage them in? Or do you have any statistics on, say, the numbers in our area that could fit into that don't get involved in any sport programs or any exercise activity? How many percentage of the people are we adding for with funding sport?
I don't have the data on me, but we do collect data, and I can share after. We do collect data on those who are participating and what hours they are. And as Roxana said earlier, and we are facilitating then a drill inside to understand why they don't. And then the conversation is, what would it take for there to be a provision or them to feel safe and supported too? So that is exactly what we're trying to do. What those numbers are, I'd have to share post meeting, but absolutely we do want to understand that. But it is complex. There's very, very different reasons. There's personal reasons, but then there's also, is the actual provision meeting the need?
Dave.
Yeah. Just level throwing it out there to you guys, challenging a question here. So just to give you a little scenario, you look at TV programs or whatever, and you can see, if you see an Indian slum, kids out playing cricket, African slum, they're out playing soccer, football, whatever. These kids actively participate, although there's no input. In a lot of cases, there's no external inputs whatsoever. So there's no incentivization, there's no funding, there's no travel, there's no nothing. They do it naturally. So what I'm throwing out to you is that, we all hear that there's a role that electronic media is undermining the engagement in physical activity. That kids are tending to head towards their tablet and not go out and not only participate in exercise and physical activity, but they're also withdrawing from that interrelationship in society. So I'm wondering whether, do you guys ponder this and how to break the cycle? Maybe incentivize it in some way, make other things. How do you make it cool? Is there a need to introduce competitive reward to try and incentivize these things within our society that has so much? We talk about, we've heard that people are deprived or whatever, but not compared to an Indian slum, So, I mean, what other ways are there,
The best way to answer is probably recently spent a bit of time with Sport New Zealand, their view around why children play or not. And they talked very clearly on 3 parts: time, space, and permission. So how much time do those children actually have? are there spaces nearby that they can get to autonomously, and do they have permission? And if you think of the examples that you gave, maybe those three needs are met. If we think about our youth and really think through what happens from the moment they leave school in terms of time, space and permission, I think there's a lot we can do there without cost, without structure. Because inherently, I do believe if they've got those three, children will move. They might not move if it's dictated to how and when and by who. But if they've got that freedom, I see them succeeding and having that ability. So that was how I would look at that. If those are the barriers, I would be trying to understand what does it look like for that child on their way home? How can they play? How can they move? Do they have permissions to?
Very good answer. Now, expanding on that a little bit, has the community got a role to play in making that period a safe time and assisting them to engage in those activities in that time?
I want some time to think about that, but a lot of our work with schools recently has been even like, what does the walk and the transport look like to school?
Lighting, yeah.
You know, can it naturally happen on the way?
I do know that lots of community groups, lots of community sports groups after school, they all work together. So then the classes times are coordinated so we can get the maximum amount of, so we can get the kids from gymnastics to dancing to basketball. Yeah, so that does happen. It does happen outside of school. And so I like the way the Buller is such a small place that we can coordinate that without too much effort. Yeah.
And it's great you're doing that, because in other regions we are having to play a greater leadership role in creating coalitions with memorandums on seasonal balance, making sure that works together as a child first, whereas I think that is happening naturally here. So yeah, that is a real strength that you are naturally putting the community and children first in that, rather than everyone grabbing that, you know, the time they can. So, yeah.
That's great. Excellent. Does anybody else have any questions at all? Okay, so from a council's point of view, or the councillors, Shane and Tony are heading up the community committee. I'm not sure from a staff point of view, Chrissy, is there any direct contact there? Sorry?
We share it.
You share
So between property and community services, we share the love.
Okay, no, that's cool. So, you know, Shane and Tony are very passionate in the areas that they're working. And so, you know, please stay in touch with us. And thanks again, you know, for coming to make the presentation. I've certainly learned a lot more about it. That's great.
Sorry.
I will leave these with you, and if you would like to, it would be great for you to fill these out and even send them back to Tara. We'd just love to capture how you, in a fun way, what you think an active Buller could look like and how we can progress. We are well connected with council staff. Tara's working closely with the property team on things like nature play guidelines, how you can utilise the natural environment. So yeah, can't say enough and helping staff enough here. And then just to wrap up, really very keen to continue working together, how we can support and how we can collaborate to make sure that Buller is as active as you'd like to see it.
That's great. Where are you guys based, the two of you?
So I'm based in Nelson.
Yeah. Nelson.
Both in Nelson.
Yeah. And Tara's here. Our commitment as a team is we want to be here. Our strategy is very clear. It's the entire region. The team of about 20 FTE. They will be, and they're present and ready. And so through the contacts provided, we'll pick up straight after this meeting and really just listen and draw a picture there. So thank you, and thanks so much for your time.
That's great. Dave's got one more question coming out of left field.
No, just quickly, no, it's not left field. No, just quickly, I mean, we're talking about these opportunities. You guys also have a really excellent thing happening up there in Nelson. It's called the Bike Hub, where they repurpose and repair and overhaul bikes and get them out into the kids that can't afford them. So I mean that's a massive thing there that could be brought down into Buller or whatever. So if it's not already,
There's Barry Walker does it at Carter's Beach. He takes them and he gives them to home builders and they disperse them.
So putting on that kind of thing is also a major, and also I believe that the bike hub has supplied bikes down as far as here as well.
And whether it's that example or others, I'd like to put it on record, I really do want to see funding coming into the region from our Tamanua Fund. It is about removing barriers to physical activity for those missing out. It is targeted around rural, remote, girls, low socioeconomic. It is those missing out. And so if your community are missing out, we'll want to have the conversation. So, and that's what Tara's there is to really know and understand that, and then our team to plug in. So we'll follow up, and thank you so much for your time.
That's great. Councillors, we have another meeting at 3:30, so 3 times round the block, please, before you come back. I'm a water man, not a water boy. I prefer the water.